Today we're cracking the code on communication.
Oh, like that.
Diving deep into how to understand what people really mean.
Yeah, going beyond just the words themselves.
Peeling back those layers,
Right, because it's rarely as straightforward as it seems on the surface.
It's like we're handing our listeners a secret decoder ring for every conversation.
Exactly. And our sources this time, wow, we've got a really interesting mix.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Okay, so we're tapping into psychology. We've got some linguistics in there.
Linguistics, huh?
Yeah, and even a dash of behavioral analysis, which I always find fascinating.
That's cool. So it's like detective work, but for conversations.
Exactly. And speaking of clues, our sources kept pointing to this idea of a communication trinity.
Communication trinity sounds kind of mystical for a communication theory, don't you think?
Right. But it's
Yes.
actually pretty practical when you break it down.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me.
So imagine this. Every time someone starts talking to us, they're usually driven by one of three main goals:
3 main goals. Okay, I'm listening.
finding comfort, seeking validation, or wanting solutions.
So like if a friend's venting about a tough day, they might just need some comfort, right?
Exactly. A little solace, a sympathetic ear, just to feel heard without judgment.
Yeah, just to let it all out.
Precisely. But here's where the Trinity gets interesting and maybe a little tricky.
Wait, what's the catch?
These goals, they aren't always 100% separate, They can overlap.
Oh, I see. So it's not always just one thing.
Right. So our friend with the bad day, they might also be looking for some validation along with that comfort.
Like they want to know their feelings are valid. They're not overreacting.
Exactly. They need to feel heard and understood.
That makes so much sense. It reminds me of this time I was trying to give advice to a friend.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah, and they were stressing about this big presentation, and I just bombarded them with all these tips.
Trying to be helpful, right?
Exactly, but they just shut down, like completely clammed up.
Oh, I've been on the receiving end of that. It's not fun.
Yeah, and looking back, I bet they just needed to vent,
Just to process those feelings without jumping into problem-solving mode.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes solutions aren't what people need in that moment.
And that's where things get really interesting because our sources actually connect this whole communication trinity idea to something you might remember from Psych 101.
Oh no, don't tell me. Is it Freud again?
Not Freud this time. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Remember that pyramid?
Wait, Maslow's hierarchy, the one with like basic needs at the bottom and self-actualization at the top?
The one and only. It might seem like a jump, but it's all about understanding that how we communicate often stems from a much deeper place.
Wow, okay, my mind is a little blown right now. How does Maslow's hierarchy play into casual conversation?
It's about recognizing those underlying needs driving our communication. Like sometimes it's not just about the words, it's about what those words are trying to fulfill within us.
So like, if someone's constantly bragging about their achievements,
Right.
it might not just be arrogance. Maybe they're craving recognition, right? Trying to hit that esteem level on Maslow's pyramid.
Precisely. Or think about the coworker who's always complaining about feeling overwhelmed. Maybe what they're really craving is a sense of belonging.
Oh, like their social needs aren't being met.
Exactly. It's like we're all climbing that pyramid, even in our everyday interactions.
This is blowing my mind. It's like there's this whole hidden language of needs operating beneath our words. No wonder we end up miscommunicating so much.
Right. It's like trying to navigate a maze in the dark.
And to make things even more complicated,
Oh, yeah, there's more.
it's not just about recognizing the needs driving other people's conversations, but also about being aware of our own filters,
Totally. Our own biases and beliefs that color how we interpret everything.
And that's where our sources bring in this concept called cognitive dissonance, right?
You got it. It's a bit of a brain twister, but stick with me. It's fascinating.
Okay, lay it on me.
Have you ever had that experience where, like, you love a certain band
Oh, yeah, totally.
and then you read this scathing review of their latest album?
And you're like, they clearly don't get it.
Exactly. Because it creates this weird mental tension. The information clashes with your existing beliefs.
It's like my brain wants to reject it, even if deep down I know the review might be valid.
And that, my friend, is cognitive dissonance in action.
So how does this whole cognitive dissonance thing play out in our conversations?
Imagine that same principle, but with ideas instead of albums.
Okay, I'm starting to see it.
Our brains are wired to resist information that contradicts our worldview, even if that information could actually help us.
So if someone's really attached to a certain way of thinking,
Right.
they might just completely shut down when they're given feedback, even if it's well-intentioned.
It's like a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Our minds crave consistency. And anything that challenges that creates dissonance.
Dissonance being that mental discomfort we were talking about.
Exactly. And we instinctively try to avoid it, which can make communication really tricky.
Especially when we're trying to have those tough conversations, right? Where feedback is crucial.
Exactly. That's where things get really interesting, because it's not just about the message itself. It's about how we navigate those mental barriers.
It's like we need to learn how to hit pause on our own biases before we can even really hear what someone else is trying to tell us.
Right. And here's the thing. The person we're talking to, they might not even be fully aware of their own underlying needs.
It's like we're all walking around with these subconscious agendas.
Exactly. And that's where self-awareness becomes so important for us as communicators.
Which brings us to another big idea from our sources, emotional intelligence.
Ah, yes, the EI buzzword. It gets tossed around a lot.
I was going to say, it does feel like one of those things everyone talks about, but no one really knows how to define.
Right. But it's so much more than just being nice or good with feelings.
Okay, so then what is it really? How do our sources define emotional intelligence?
At its core, it's about two main things: understanding your own emotions and being attuned to the emotions of others.
So less about suppressing our emotions, more about being able to understand and manage them.
Exactly. And using that understanding to navigate our interactions more effectively.
So it's not just about being self-aware, but also about using that self-awareness to connect with others on a deeper level.
You got it. And that's where empathy comes in.
So instead of just reacting to someone's words at face value, emotional intelligence gives us the ability to hit pause and see that bigger picture.
It's like having that extra layer of insight, being able to read between the lines and pick up on those subtle cues.
So, like, if a coworker says, "I'm having a bad day," we don't just jump to, "Oh no, what happened?" or start offering solutions.
Right. Instead, we can pause, tap into those emotional intelligence skills, and recognize that bad day could mean a whole range of things.
They might need comfort, they might want validation, maybe they just need to vent.
Exactly. And emotional intelligence helps us navigate those nuances, meet people where they are.
And we can't forget about nonverbal communication.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes the most powerful messages are conveyed without ever saying a word.
Body language, it's like a whole conversation happening in the background.
Exactly. A simple shift in posture, a certain look in someone's eyes, even a sigh can speak volumes.
But body language can be tricky, right? Like, I feel like it's so easy to misinterpret a gesture or an expression.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Context is key. You have to look at the whole picture, not just isolate one gesture.
It's like that saying, "It's not what you said, it's how you said it," but amped up to 11.
Right. We're talking tone of voice, facial expressions, body language. It all adds up.
And what's fascinating is even our language itself can hold clues to those underlying intentions.
Oh, for sure. Our linguistic sources had a lot to say about that.
Like what?
Well, they pointed out how often we use phrases like "I feel like" or "I think" when what we're really seeking is validation, not necessarily an objective analysis.
So it's less about seeking information or opinions and more about wanting to feel heard and understood.
Precisely. Like if someone says, "I feel like this project isn't a good fit for me," they might not be looking for solutions or suggestions.
They're looking for you to say, "I get it, I totally understand where you're coming from."
Exactly. And again, they may not even be consciously aware of that, but those subtle language cues can be incredibly revealing.
Wow, it's like we're constantly sending and receiving these subtle signals without even realizing it.
It's like we're all speaking a secret language we didn't even know we knew.
This is making me rethink every conversation I've ever had.
Right. And just when you think you've cracked the code,
There's another layer to uncover.
always. Because here's the thing, even the most straightforward sentence can have wildly different meanings depending on who's saying it, who they're saying it to, and the context surrounding the conversation.
It's like that classic example, how's work? Totally different vibe hearing it from a friend versus your boss.
Exactly. Same words, entirely different worlds of meaning. Which brings us to the big question. How do we take all of this fascinating but kind of overwhelming information and actually put it into practice?
Right, because it's one thing to understand the theory, but how do we actually become better communicators in our own lives?
Right, because like you said, it's fascinating stuff, but how do we actually use it?
Yeah, how do we bridge that gap between theory and real life conversations?
Exactly, because I can't exactly pull out Maslow's hierarchy mid-conversation.
Thankfully, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Our sources actually offer some pretty practical tips.
Oh, good, because I was going to say I need an actionable game plan here.
And the good news is it's not about memorizing a script or trying to become a mind reader.
Okay, that's a relief.
It's more about shifting our approach and building a few key skills.
I like the sound of that. What skills are we talking about?
Well, it all starts with becoming more active listeners, which I know sounds simple enough.
Active listening, yeah, but I have a feeling it's more than just putting my phone down when someone's talking. You're right, it goes way beyond that. It's about being fully present in the conversation, like really present.
So what does that look like in practice?
It means making eye contact, paying attention to those nonverbal cues we were talking about earlier, and most importantly,
Okay, I'm listening.
giving the other person the space to fully express themselves without interruption or judgment.
So creating that safe space for them to open up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because once they feel truly heard, that's where reflective listening comes in.
Reflective listening. That rings a bell, but remind me what it is again.
So it's a technique our sources highlight as being super powerful, but often overlooked.
Really? That's surprising. What makes it so effective?
Well, it's basically about acting as a verbal mirror.
A verbal mirror. Okay.
You're reflecting back what you've heard to make sure you're both on the same page.
So it's about paraphrasing, clarifying, making sure you've understood everything correctly.
Exactly.
Mhm.
It's saying things like, okay, let me make sure I'm getting this right. You're feeling frustrated because of this specific thing, and you're concerned about this other thing, right?
Yeah, almost like you're summarizing their emotions and the key points they're making.
You got it. And here's the cool thing about reflective listening. It doesn't just prevent misunderstandings.
Which is huge in itself.
Right. But it also deepens the connection between people.
How so?
Because when you take the time to really understand someone's perspective, it shows them you care.
It's like saying, I see you, I hear you, and what you're saying matters to me.
Exactly. And that feeling of being truly heard and understood, that's huge.
It's incredibly powerful, and it lays the groundwork for empathy, which our sources were all over as being essential.
Oh, absolutely. Empathy is the game changer when it comes to communication.
Empathy. It's one of those words like, we all know it's important, but it can feel kind of vague, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, how do we actually cultivate more empathy in our interactions, especially when we might not have gone through the exact same experiences as the person we're talking to?
Right, and that's actually a really important point to clarify. Empathy isn't about having had the same experiences. It's about connecting with the emotions beneath the surface.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it's about putting yourself in their shoes, emotionally speaking, and asking yourself, if I were feeling what they're feeling right now, what would I need?
So it's not about having all the answers or offering solutions. It's about showing up with curiosity and compassion.
Exactly. It's about saying, I might not fully understand what you're going through, but I'm here for you, whatever that looks like.
And sometimes the most powerful questions are the simplest, right?
Totally.
Like instead of jumping in with advice or asking, do you want help with that or do you just need to vent? We can just ask, what would be most helpful for you right now?
Right. You're meeting them where they are emotionally and offering support that's tailored to their specific needs in that moment.
Which, as we've learned today, those needs can shift and change even within a single conversation.
Right, exactly. Flexibility and adaptability are key.
Wow, this deep dive has been incredible. It really feels like we've uncovered this whole hidden dimension of communication.
Right. It's like realizing we've been speaking a different language this whole time.
And learning that language, even just a little bit, can make such a difference in how we connect with others.
Absolutely. And the best part is, it's an ongoing journey. Every conversation is a chance to learn and grow.
So true. Well, on that note, listeners, we'll leave you with this. The next time you're listening to someone, take a moment before you respond, hit that pause button. And ask yourself, what are they really trying to communicate beneath the surface? You might be surprised by what you discover. Until next time, keep those conversations flowing and keep